Hey everybody, welcome back to the Global DeFi Conference. I hope you had a good break and lots of networking, meeting some new people, visiting sponsor booths. We've got another absolutely brilliant lineup here for this panel on using DeFi for good and pushing for global financial inclusion. The panel moderator today will be Melanie Goldsmith. Melanie is the Business Development Associate at Parcel. To make sure to put into the Q&A if you've got questions for the participants, Melanie will bring those on and make sure to upvote your favorite ones so we know which ones to ask everybody. And also, yeah, there'll be possibly some polls throughout that you can answer. And yeah, just say hey in the chat, where you're from, where you're tuning in. And I'll get out of the way now and bring Melanie on to introduce the panelists.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you for the intro, and just thanks everybody for joining us. And special thanks goes out to the panelists for joining us today, gearing up to lend us their thoughts. And you could probably tell from the title of this panel, Using DeFi for Good and Pushing for Global Financial Inclusion, that this chat's going to be all about the relationship between DeFi and goodness, sort of examining why decentralization actually matters. So it's a very big topic to tackle because there's so many ways to go about answering this or even to begin to think about it. But thankfully, our panel is extremely well rounded. Today, we've got on the panel with us Eric Osura, the founder and CEO of Ofoma, David Chom of XX Network, who's really a pioneer of cryptography, who will be joining in with us a little bit later. We have Midushan Rhodes from ScaleSwap, Irina, the head of metaverse growth from Unique Network, and Reggie, the CEO of Gather Network. So I'm going to let you guys intro yourselves in a moment, but it probably just makes sense to start off with introing myself so you guys in the audience know a bit about me. I'm at Parcel right now, where we're sort of a Zillow for the metaverse, and we facilitate different relationships between metaverse participants. And I came over from The Block, which is a digital asset research firm where I specifically focused on mapping out different DeFi ecosystems on a more granular level. My bad. But basically, with that, I'm very excited for the topic today because this is something that I'm super interested in, and I'm sure everybody else is very interested in this. And it's one of the oldest arguments in support of the adoption of DeFi to me on a global scale is that the technology is borderless. It has the ability to provide crypto financial services for the unbanked and help out with making supply chains more transparent. Part of this conversation, though, will also be about how DeFi is good for Western civilizations. So we're going to tap on that. And so with that, I'd love to have the panelists introduce themselves. We can start off with Reggie, if you'd like, maybe just give us an introduction of who you are, what your project does, and how it relates to the topic of the panel.
For sure, for sure. So my name is Reggie. I'm the founder and CEO of Gather Network. I am also a partner at GAF Capital Partners, which is a UAE only a blockchain firm based in the UAE with a couple other partners. I got into crypto. My first exposure to crypto was back in university, where I think it was like 2012, 2013 or something like that. And I wanted to purchase some substances on the web, and I needed Bitcoin. However, I did not know Bitcoin was fungible. And being a broke uni student, and I bought Litecoin instead. So that was my first exposure to crypto. Fast forward a few years, I've been working in corporate, family-owned oil and gas company. Moved to Publicis Group, which is a very large marketing company. Hopped around agencies, had an exit in a startup, and that's when I kind of took the full dive into crypto, starting with the POW side and home mining, and from there I kind of founded Gather with my previous experiences, and how that kind of what Gather is. It was a very post my last startup. I was hired as a consultant to help an app and website monetize without using ads. Like, that's a tricky one, and that's what led to Gather. So what Gather is it's an alternative form of monetization for publishers and app developers. That's how it started. It's very simple. We're working with a number of clients right now, including streaming service as well. They just have our code on their website. People provide their consent, and we're using their compute power, very small percent, to secure the Gather blockchain and any tokens or coins that deploy on our layer 1. We are a layer 1 blockchain with a layer 2 being built as well. And yeah, we have Gather Enterprise, which is a boutique arm that helps enterprise large clients come onto our blockchain, and who are looking to explore getting into this area and space, but they don't have the expertise or know how to navigate it. It also has an incubation arm, and we incubate other projects as well. So an example of that, we have a contract live with a cannabis firm in the States, in New York, to help them with managing their cash transactions specifically, because there's a lot of pilferage that happens there. And how this relates to DeFi, I've been in the space for about 4 years, I would say, heavy. And I've seen a lot so far. And being on the VC side as well, you see the good, the bad, and the ugly from both sides. So it's very, very interesting. The space has a lot more to go, but there's a lot of opportunities out there right now as well.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you. So Midishan, do you want to take it from there?
Yeah, sure. First of all, guys, I'm so sorry. It started raining heavily here, so if you hear thunders and rainy sounds, just excuse me. I try to keep it as clear as possible. So I got into cryptos, blockchain space about 5 years back. I joined Polygon as a volunteer because I just didn't know where to start. So I thought maybe it would be great to start there. And eventually, understanding the scope of this technology, I was super immersed in it, and I started spending a lot of time learning, educating myself, and experiencing in this platform. I let go of my full-time jobs just to make sure that I'm investing time here. Since then, it's been a wonderful journey. Currently, I'm with ScaleSwap as the marketing strategist, which is an IDEO Launchpad. For those of you all who have not heard about IDEO Launchpads, you might have heard about ICO. So this is more like the updated, safe way of getting your tokens listed in the exchanges. So ScaleSwap is a transparent launchpad that has its own unique features, such as for example, the Scalescore system. Unlike any other launchpads, we have a system that monitors. I'm so sorry, it's thundering.
No worries.
So unlike many other launchpads, a unique feature here is that we operate with a completely loyal system that allows people to, I can say gamification. We gamified the entire system of participating in IDOs. People can play around with increasing their scores by participating in IDOs regularly and buying tokens, and the period that you hold the token matters. The number of projects you have invested in matters. So multiple factors that help you be a part of our loyal community. And it's also a community-centric launchpad. And I think one of the biggest features is that we launched the world's first wrapped NFT launchpad a month ago, which is basically initial NFT offering, where you have the tokens wrapped inside the NFT. The utility value is also high in that. So that's ScaleSwap introduced it to the market last month. So apart from that, I also run a Web3 advertising agency in South Asia that helps commercial brands adopt into the blockchain and the metaverse and the Web3 space, right? Yeah, that's about
Awesome.
it. Thank you.
Yeah. So Eric, you want to take it from there?
Absolutely. My name is Eric Oswara. I am the founder CEO of Afoma. I started the Afoma journey about maybe 8 months now. And what inspired me to start Afoma is purely from a social impact perspective. I run a charity here in Canada that does work across sub-Saharan Africa. And we're more focused around, poverty alleviation, quality education, and good health and well-being. And I wanted to build a not-for-profit that primarily was sustainable, and I wanted to find creative ways of doing that. So that led or inspired me towards Afoma. So Afoma is more of a social enterprise that is primarily driven to leverage our utility token, also named Afoma as well, which, by the way, means goodwill in Igbo language. I'm originally from Nigeria. And so Afoma is primarily driven to drive social impact. But what we wanted to do was We wanted to just build a proper utility of our token towards good, right? We wanted to leverage our technology to actually solve real world issues. And as we started doing a lot of brainstorming, we felt that we wanted to tap into artists and artisans from marginalized regions. We tend to see a lot of that where artisans from poorer countries are locked in within their local economy, either because of lack of digitization, lack of payments, proper payment systems, or they just lack capital, financial services, right? So that's where we come in. Our format is primarily designed to build an ecosystem that will allow for artists, artisans from across the globe, especially those who are marginalized, to contribute towards this ecosystem. And in our ecosystem, we're looking at a blockchain integrated multi-vendor e-commerce platform purely for handicraft products. And we will tie that into, which is called Selidic, we will tie that into an NFT marketplace, but primarily focused on preservation of culture, right? And preservation of heritage skills, right? Because we see a lot of that lacking from some of these poorer regions today, right? So, and we are building a platform that will tie in together, whereas people or youth across the globe are building out NFTs, projecting their culture from wherever part of the globe they're in, and it's tied to a physical product. We want to obviously build a digital twin. So as you're buying an NFT of this digital art, there might be a Canva being shipped out to you as well. So that's how we're trying to merge that. And because we start seeing a lot of trend where technology, Africa and all of these other poorer regions are left behind, especially when it comes to emerging technologies, we decided that we will build our own metaverse world, primarily again, focused on impact. So we are looking at strategic partnerships today where, for example, we're going to project our handicraft marketplace onto our metaverse. We're going to project our NFT marketplace onto our metaverse. We're going to be looking at beautiful partnerships with organizations today that can build out a model of ancient civilizations for countries within our metaverse as well. We are talking about looking at other strategic partners where we can decentralize filmmakers who are projecting nature across the globe, not just primarily on Discovery Channel or on National Geographic. Now we want to bring in people who have that skill to tell their own story and all project within the metaverse where people can come together, learn, and understand other people's culture and diverse backgrounds, and then help break racial disparity. So we are primarily using our format to solve real world issues, and that's primarily what we are all about. Thank you.
Got it. That sounds awesome. I love that metaverse also. So Irina, I guess you could take it from there. Also awesome to see another person like immersed in the metaverse and connecting all of these strands.
Thank you, Melanie. It's a pleasure to be here today. So my name is Irina Karagaur. I'm the head of Metaverse Growth at Unique Network. I'm leading business development and business growth for Unique. We are the NFT infrastructure for Kusama and Polkadot. So we won 2 parachain slots, one for Kusama, one for Polkadot. And one of the notable projects that I want to talk about today is Digital Art for Climate. So this is an initiative that directly relates with doing good. We are building an NFT marketplace for an NGO in partnership with UN Habitat and in partnership with the art community. We ran an art competition in June 2020 and announced the winners of the art competition at COP26 in Glasgow, and now are preparing for an auction of the 30 finalists and 4 winners winning artworks in June this year. So what we as a platform are trying to achieve is, of course, to give essential NFT tools to every creator out there, to every project and onboard applications, enterprise and startups who want to build next generation NFT technology. We are giving white label marketplaces that is super simple to launch, super simple to put your foot at the door of the NFT space, as many businesses nowadays are looking how to enter the metaverse, how to build their virtual world or a game, or launch a marketplace, how to do it as an independent creator, independent from centralized platforms. So we came up with this toolkit that helps you go to market very quickly. And on the other hand, we're building all the advanced features like nested NFT palette, so something that technological allows you to really bring NFTs to 2.0 stage, because so far we've seen like JPEGs, collectibles, but how can we bring more utility to NFTs? How can we onboard really art projects that have longevity? How can we attract artists who are building their career and onboard platforms who curate their content, who really think long-term strategically in the adoption of NFTs? And of course, a very important part of the NFT space right now is doing good. I really believe that there is a blue ocean for doing good. There are many NGOs who discovered transparency of blockchain and the ability to track every transaction. So the ability to really keep NGOs accountable. And now we can really, as individuals, participate in any good initiative by sending our crypto to a specific wallet and tracking how these funds were really used. So if we're helping a gorilla somewhere in we know exactly which one, we know exactly where the funds go, as opposite to centralized opaque system when you kind of donate to a charitable cause, but you don't really know, except you have maybe a picture of that gorilla, but you can't really 100% track where the funds go. So that is one of the examples. Then there are platforms like Doing Good. Majority of platforms nowadays, they try to donate a part of their profits towards, sustainable development goals, really, at a larger scale. And what I'm seeing in the crypto community is that this initiatives, this social good really moves people, and this is something that really a lot of people deeply care about, and it's really fundamental to bring together DeFi, NFTs, and really explore what are the opportunities of combining the two. We are now about to launch a new type of gift card in our ecosystem where you can combine an image, for example, and a stable coin. So by doing this, you are able to not only send, almost use it like a postcard with that same gorilla. I keep on using his example, but that has $20 attached, $100 attached. So you can actually use also the stable coins to support the organization or support people who are working with that cause. And there are so many more use cases that we will see in this space in the nearest future.
Yeah, awesome. Good. Because I want to circle back to use cases a little bit later. So that's a really good point. And I think something that you mentioned is like kind of the meshing of socialization, gamification, and like trustless networks. I think that's super important to DeFi. And really, when we can kind of get that amalgamation to jive, and be cohesive, that's when we'll see like more mainstream adoption of this. And maybe we tapped on this a bit with Eric and Irina, but let's focus on, how do you guys interpret the phrase DeFi for good, and how can it be understood through the lens of the projects that you're working on through your respective works? Because I know everybody can have a different definition of it since it's a pretty broad topic. So maybe if we can hone in and actually define what you guys see as DeFi for good. So we can start off with Eric, if you'd like to take it.
Sure. So for me, my definition for DeFi for good is, leveraging, crypto solutions, right? With DeFi, we have thousands of DeFi projects, a lot. And I think we tend to also see where it's all about a copy of a lot of all the DeFis, right? If you look at regions like predominantly in the poorer regions today, and we put out a lot of default, how do these DeFi projects actually lift them from their current situation, right?
Right.
We tend to see a lot. The payment gateways, there are thousands of them out there, and I think what we want to start seeing are DeFi related projects that actually can create impact, right? Because payment gateway is just one facet of that, right? But we also want to see how we can leverage some of these projects to actually lift up humanity, right? There are multiple of, where you can also look at where we're talking about staking products or staking rewards or liquidity pool rewards and all whatnot. But that, again, if you can get these people access to those tokens or to those projects to actually get in there, right? So for me, when we talk about DeFi for good, it's more around looking at DeFi related projects that can truly break barriers, right? Not just from a payment gateway perspective or getting access to a liquidity pool or a staking program within a decentralized exchange or whatnot, because you have to get them there, right? So I think for me, it's primarily about building projects like, for example, where Selidic, our marketplace, is primarily has a section of the DeFi, all right? But we want to build out something where you're actually creating the impact, right? You're putting the power into someone's hands, and in doing that, you're trying to eliminate the barrier of entry for them, right? So if you're looking at DeFi for good, you have to find ways to reduce the barrier of entry. Because if you're just putting out a DeFi project and there's still that barrier for people to get into, then what's the point of it, right? So DeFi for good is really definitely building out DeFi projects, reducing barrier of entry, reducing barrier of operation. And that's critical for me. And that's my definition for DeFi for good.
Nice. And anybody can hop in on this, but just a follow-up to that, Eric, is do you think that barrier to entry is mostly to do with, access to education that enables people to have like more technical knowledge of the space? Does it have to do with like to me, a lot of times the more decentralized something is, potentially the more not like UX, UI like friendly it is. So are those like pain points that you're noticing? Like, what is that barrier to entry? And I know there are a few, so maybe you could choose one, and if anybody else wants to choose one, but that's something that I've noticed in like this whole DeFi for good thing that like really sticks out to me, especially when we're trying to help like those developing countries.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. One key thing is education. That's for a fact, no doubt about that. That's one, and we saw that from the get-go, right? When we're building out this ecosystem, we're like, okay, hold on a second, right? There are people we want to target that have no knowledge or understanding of this. And what we ended up doing is we started looking at strategic partnerships of organizations that educate on blockchain or cryptocurrency, right? And we started partnering. We said, we're going to partner with you because what do we want to do here? What are we doing here? Imagine an artisan who wants to be part of our community, who has no knowledge about crypto, but they're ready to get into that space, right? They want to see what it's like. So what do? We say, we have these partners within our ecosystem that you can go learn about blockchain and cryptocurrency. And in doing that, we will incentivize you for learning, because it's when you incentivize, you motivate to learn, and you're giving them access to the crypto or to our utility token, so that they can also understand what it means to connect to a wallet, do transfers, do swaps, get payments, so that's really how you get people started, right? That's really one of the key things. So definitely education is one of them, but it also comes down to the product itself or to the founders themselves, right? Because you have to be, for us, we spotted this and we said, we have to fix this. So some folks will look at it and go, that's not my problem. My problem is I just want to build a platform, get it. If you get it, if you don't get it, that's your problem, right? So you have to be ready to actually step in there to actually see. So that eliminates a bit of the decentralized side of it, right? So, so regardless of where we want to drive decentralization, which is key for us, big time, but there also has to be some sort of intervention, and we will eventually get there. I know a lot of people say DAOs, we're building out DAOs, but at this point, it's still not realistic. It's not a realistic approach for regions like in Africa. Are we going to get there eventually? Yes, but it takes time. It takes a bit of handholding to actually get people there.
Got it. Yeah, no, I love that answer. And so I guess we can work it back now to Irina. So, how do you see, DeFi for good and for global financial inclusion? And if you'd like, you can also choose to like hit one of those pain points, right? Like one of those barriers to entry that you've noticed, maybe closer to the metaverse or to your field.
Yeah, I certainly agree with Eric about the user experience, and the product has to be easy to understand, because here we're particularly talking about mass adoption, and we're talking about people who are not crypto savvy, who may be not just scared of the whole Bitcoin and crypto space, but scared to open the wallet, not knowing how to approach this. So this is a huge barrier to entry, and we need to educate many more people, but we most importantly need to build products that are easy to use, that are, we need to bring the best Web2 experience in Web3. We need to make it understandable. Another big barrier to entry in the current space, for example, if we talk about building platforms on Ethereum, there are really expensive gas fees, or you have to pay gas fee if you're transferring your non-fungible token from one wallet to another inside of the system. So with new generation blockchains, we're eliminating these barriers, and we actually enabled sponsorship of transaction fees. So you don't have to have tokens in your wallet in order to transfer NFT from one platform to another, one wallet to another. And this is a huge step to mass adoption. Also, the gas fee in our ecosystem are by default, they're really micro gas fees, because we're trying to get as close to credit card payments as we can in terms of fees. Because when you pay with your Visa or MasterCard, you don't really feel as an end user that, there's any fee applies, but there are fees. They're just really micro fees. And this is supremely important, because if we're talking about transforming the entire economy, and we're talking about millions and trillions of transactions on the blockchain, we need to be ready to have it, affordable cost of transaction. Another very important point is that Ethereum is not energy efficient. And there's a lot of discussion at the level of European Commission. Shall we continue using proof of work blockchains? Are we polluting environment? Are we really, actually facilitating climate crisis instead of fixing it? So with proof of stake blockchains, again, we're solving a huge criticism to Web3, which is environmental pollution. Because by default, on our chain, on Unique Network, minting one NFT is equal to one exhale, one human breath. So this is how really minimal it is. And we're now conducting more research in this area to, be able to really have an extended analysis on how much CO2 one NFT on our chain produces. But for those interested in the topic, I would recommend a current research by Crypto Research Institute, which discovered, it's an independent research, and it discovered that Polkadot ecosystem is the least pollutant out there. So there are already studies being made. And of course, yes, it's education. There are so many people with whom I speak every single day who have no idea, not even what DeFi is, how to use this, where to buy tokens, how to approach the space. But also we need more education for companies, for startups, because they will be the ones driving this adoption at this stage. They would be the ones bringing resources together, technical resources, business resources, educational ones. So we need to really approach this from a perspective of business community, and work together as the whole Web3 space in order to enable really easy easy products, easy to use products, accessible ways for platforms, accessible ways for DeFi, minimize the jargon that developers like to use. So people who are not familiar with any technicalities can really feel safe and secure and navigate this environment easily.
Right. Cool. Yeah. It's really interesting. And so I guess like riding off the back of that question, we can switch it over to Reggie or Midushan. And so, what role does decentralization actually play in this landscape? Like why decentralization and why is it maybe more efficient and it enables like trustless interactions and transactions. So what's your take on like why is it that DeFi poses the opportunity for good?
Sure. So I think it's a trustless part, right?
Yeah.
If you look at like Southeast Asia, Africa, parts of Eastern Europe, South America, most of the world, right? You have corruption, you have issues, you have middlemen, you have people taking their cuts, people taking their commissions. Being on chain, you reduce that. However, just because it's on chain doesn't mean that this is still not going to exist. I mean, I'm sure these people who are lining their pockets, for example, with charity contributions, right? Somewhere along that supply chain, $1 is taken, $2 taken, some vendor costs are increased, right? Those people aren't going to facilitate DeFi, decentralized tech, because that's opposing what they do in their living, right? Their way of being and working. But to come back to the original question, decentralization makes it transparent. You see what is going where, most importantly, and that's above all. And then anyone can contribute in a somewhat anonymous manner, right? You could have someone who's a big celebrity, etc., and may not want to be publicly aligned with a cause. You can do that, right? That's what blockchain allows you to do. Or if you just have a lot of money and you want to, be private, you can do that as well with some other wallet or a non-docs wallet. You can do that, and blockchain allows you to do that. I mean, there's a couple points I wanted to mention about like, you're talking about DeFi for good. Definitely about the points that Eric and Irene were mentioning. It's definitely market education is the biggest aspect, right? Because mobile penetration in these areas are some of the highest in the world. Anyone can create a wallet right now by going to Coinbase or whatever it may be, whatever site you want to talk about, MetaMask, etc. It's that UI and UX is the current problem. Like if I go to my neighbor right now, be like, hey, do you want to make like 12% right now in 30 days or whatever the current farm is? You have to go to something called curve.com, deposit something called USDT in there against this token. That's a horrible UX. Now try explaining that to like an 80-year-old grandma. Like she's just gonna like close the door, be like, here, have some cookies or something, honestly. So
Great.
The UI UX is a huge issue right now. Once that changes to a smoother process, right, to where you don't even know what's happening and it's just like this, that's when you're going to see higher adoption rates from these third world countries where mobile penetration already exists.
Totally. I think that was really just like a great way of putting it. And I know that Midushan actually, is tapped into marketing. And so through the marketing lens, what is your take with that? Like, what have you seen?
Yeah, I mean, before getting there, I'd like to address a couple of things that we've missed out, right? For example, you asked why DeFi is very important in this space. Like, mobile penetration is great. Some areas have good internet. It's easy accessible, so it's important. But more than all of that, if you go into areas that are underprivileged, for example, they don't have access to internet, they don't have access to mobile phone, it can still solve the problem, right? But coming back to why DeFi is very important here is 30% of adults in this world right now, 30%, that is 1/3 of the world's population, do not have bank accounts.
Right.
Exactly because they don't have the necessary documents to open a bank account, and banks do not allow them to do it either, right? So what can DeFi do here? Like allow people to create wallets, store, stake, transfer. So this entire DeFi system, blockchain, makes it easy for people who are underprivileged just to open a bank account because they don't have the documents necessary to be able to access wallets. But again, okay, we can say they can open a Binance or a Coinbase or one wallet, MetaMask, and they can start accessing to these funds. Anonymous people are donating for their welfare and etc. But still, there are still places that doesn't have mobile phones and internet connection, right? What can happen there? Like, for example, Chinese research organizations and UN and UNESCO bodies are already doing researches on hardware wallets that can be accessible in these regions. Like UN and UNESCO is already working with certain bodies, and the testing is already going on. And on the other end, people like Elon Musk are talking about transactions without internet. So areas that do not have internet will still be able to do transactions. Government bodies, centralized bodies are trying to make sure that, and even if you look at the sustainable development goals, uh, financial inclusion becomes a contributing enabler to 7 of the 17 sustainable goals. Like, just by giving access to finance and being able to be in that space is allowing them to enable 7 out of 17. And then even if you take the World Bank, like every time they talk about DeFi, there is negativity going around. Like, centralized bodies do not want to allow this to come into mainstream, right? So they always have something to say, but they also have something else to say. They're saying the moment financial inclusion is incorporated amongst people who are not privileged, you are already fighting hunger, poverty, like all these basic essentials that a human being needs. You already get access to it by having access to a bank account and financial means, right? So I think that's something that we need to look at, and then maybe organizations like Eric's and Irina's can involve with organizations that are involved in projects like this already. For example, there's this particular research body in Ghana that's working on a software, open source software, that will allow students and parents to invest money into it. And every year, say for example, at the end of the fifth grade, for that 5 year, the currency that has been invested is being staked. So after 5 years, they return the money to the student. It's still under a testing process, but still, people have already started adopting to things like this. And these problems needs to be addressed, especially while talking about DeFi for good and financial inclusion. It's critical that we address that people do not have access to bank accounts, internets, mobile phone. We have the privilege, so we are able to access it, we are able to transfer, right? So, and then how does all of this relate to marketeers, right? What are marketeers going to do in this space is something that's very relevant, because even the greatest of ideas, if it's not translated in the right way to the mass, it's a failed idea, right? If the mass does not want to adapt to DeFi and blockchain, what's the point in 300 million people using DeFi if the rest of the world doesn't want to? So that's where marketeers need to come into play and educate these people. Like Rajesh, if I'm not mistaken, was, I'm sorry if I said your name wrong. You were talking about how education is the key in this area. So I'm saying marketers need to step in and start doing like education in the right way. And it's not about saying that we can do this. It's about telling them that, because an average human being who has access to internet does not understand how blockchain operates. Like Statista's last research says 1 out of every 3 crypto users or a blockchain user does not know why he's in that space. He's in that space because of the hype and the virality, because everyone's talking about it, right? So in that privileged people do not understand what's happening here. How can we expect underprivileged people to understand blockchain, cryptocurrency, and DeFi, right? So that's where marketers need to come into play, help them understand the fundamentals, basics, and we need to communicate it in such a way that it's a solution. It's not commercialization or anything like that, right? So maybe I think with that note, I would like to also listen to the rest of the panel.
Sure. No, that was great. And I think it's super important that you tapped on, the global financial inclusion part, because that's a huge component of this. And it's true, so many people are unbanked and so many people can gain access to crypto financial services if we also address the points that Eric, Irina, and Reggie were making. And so it's like everything is so interconnected, and it really does have to do with like, how are we conveying this to the public, and how can we convey this to people, that don't have access to internet and don't have access to this, higher level of blockchain education. And with that, I see that David's now here with us. So David, if you want to just give us, a brief introduction, and then let us know how you think about decentralization and in relation with like good that can be achieved, let's say in terms of global financial inclusion, however really that you view that.
Well, thanks, Melanie. So it's I'm humbled and honored to be here with you and the other speakers. I was listening in a bit, and sorry for technical difficulties, but I'm overwhelmed by the passion and the sensibleness of what I've heard from the other speakers, and just by way of introduction, I just want to say that well, actually, the truth is, it was like 40 years ago that I realized that it was all about decentralization and crypto, and that's when I invented mixed networks and eCash, and those are still like tools that color what the space looks like today. The thing was, okay, when I invented this stuff, of course there was no way to use it. The internet didn't exist, and the NSA, the head of the NSA, National Security Agency, said he would put anyone who had a conference or a session on cryptography in jail. And that's when I decided it was important to organize the first conference in that environment on cryptography. And I invited everybody secretly, and like over 100 people came, pretty much everybody in the field. And that kicked off the International Association for Cryptologic Research, because we announced the organization there. And this, so I founded that. So essentially, I feel like I, set cryptography free because I realized how important it is for decentralization of power. And I risked, spending the rest of my life in jail on that. So,
Right.
But more recently, the technology is finally there. People have the whole cumulative knowledge and art of civilization in their hand every day, and they have access to all that. It's quite it's quite an amazing thing. And now finally, all this crypto can actually be used by people. And so then the question is, well, like was so eloquently said here, which people are those? Is it just the 10% or 5%, 3% of, or is it most people? And there's an aspect which, I think usability was mentioned, certainly, and the unbanked and lack of access to connectivity. These are all issues. There's no doubt those are important. And actually, in my keynote, I'll talk about the lack of connectivity in the unbanked, because I've got a new thing that works real well in that setting. But I think that there's another dimension, and you asked me to look at this through my own lens, Melanie. So I think it's fair enough to say.
That's great.
It's the privacy and censorship dimension. It's nice to say that people need to know how to use this stuff, but a lot of places in the world they're not supposed to use it. And the government's after them and spying on them, and all this. And so you need a way to access and to have privacy in this online sphere. Otherwise, it's just not going to empower individuals. I mean, that's the basic thing, really. It's my insight 40 years ago was that privacy, and we called it authentication, but that is the sort of veracity of data, which comes with privacy and cryptography. That is the thing that is powerful. That is the power that you can distribute, and that is what will be necessary. What I realized then will be necessary to be in the hands of the public in order for power to be decentralized. And so like privacy is kind of like is freedom. It is essentially for meaningful democracy. You can get into all the various flavors of these terms, but
yeah.
Essentially,
Mhm.
if you want to enfranchise and empower and create a level playing field for the for the vast majority of the global population, then you're going to need to empower them with cryptography, and that is not only to protect their financial assets or let them accumulate them and participate in the in the financial services, which are essential, right? It's not just payments; it's the whole. You need futures and so on in order to really participate in the real economy, right? So, but what's also needed is a way for people to protect their own information and their associations and their, if people cannot protect their own political thought or have protect the sphere of communication with their friends and family or whatever, there's no basis for democracy. If you atomize the public fully by offering them free services and knowing everything about them as we have today, and discourage, and try to further be divisive and create, tribes and all this, you're totally destroying the potential for democracy. And it seems to me the only way that civilization can really prevail is through a decentralization of power a la democracy, and that really means everybody has to be enfranchised. And so at a very basic level, they need to be able to participate in the financial services world on a level playing field with everybody else. And
but David, 1 second, I just want to hop in for 1 second because I'm very happy that you brought this whole privacy conversation up, because that was actually going to be the next thing that I asked you. And so just while you're on this topic, before we move on to anybody else, like, how do you see, like privacy bolstered through DeFi in like a specific way? Can you give us like an example that stands out to you of how privacy is bolstered?
And privacy, it is central to all of this, but I think that it's not so much that DeFi can help privacy, but rather the other way around. That privacy is almost a necessary condition for DeFi. Right. So you need to have privacy in order to have DeFi. In a lot of places in the world, you're not supposed to have DeFi, right? So you need privacy of communication so you can have DeFi without people stopping you from having it. But there's another aspect. It's a deep question, actually. You ask, if they consider the following, it's a slightly higher level than DeFi, but suppose that one nation state were to know all the payment transaction details involved in another nation.
Right. That's
big.
That
would give the first nation a really unfair advantage in like real estate investment, companies to figuring out who to back and every other thing, and which people they don't like or are clustered together in which groups, et cetera, et cetera. So it is, it's really important that each country take it upon itself to protect its citizens' privacy from being surveilled by other countries. This is something that's essentially never discussed, right? Countries love to enter trading deals with other countries. Say, oh, we'll expose all our private information to you in exchange for you expose yours to us or something. This is a big issue. But this also, just to zoom in on what you're part of the connection you're making there, Melanie, is that what's also often not recognized about the significance of privacy is that markets depend on privacy. Markets are the beloved myth, because no perfect market exists, right? Of a very of people interested in money, right, and libertarian generally and so forth, and all kinds of people just love the idea of free market. I think it's a wonderful mechanism. Now, but I rarely hear it mentioned that if you know the position of every participant in a market, then the whole thing falls apart. Markets are based on privacy of the holdings of the participants, and that's a key aspect of it. So that shows the power of markets, but also in these days, you can't be a wealthy person in a relatively poor country and have that too widely known, because that could be big trouble. So that's another aspect to privacy. So if you want to be involved in DeFi, you really need a protected sphere in which to do that sort of 6 ways to Sunday, and your country shouldn't be stopping you. It should be helping you.
Right. So yeah, David, I like that answer a lot, and it kind of opens the debate, which we won't tap into right now just because we're lacking time, but of like open blockchains and closed blockchains, and really like, should we be able to see the distributed ledger, should we not? And I guess it depends really on each use case, but maybe if we could start with Reggie, I'd love to hear your take on this, and we can sort of go around and how do you see the progression of DeFi and all of the pain points that we mentioned? If you could choose whichever you'd like to talk about, but where do you see this going, let's say 5 years down the line? Like, where should this be, either idealistically or realistically, because sometimes those differ, but yeah, where do you see this in 5 years?
I'll take it both ways. Like, if there was a protocol out there today that had private stable coins, I would not use any of the existing stable coins today. I don't want anyone knowing what I'm doing, who I'm paying, and what I'm paying for. And there's a lot of people like that as well. And I mean, I don't want to go too much in it because I do live in UAE. So it's, yeah. In 5 years, I would like to see that in certain parts of the world, they accept that privacy is a fundamental right and not a privilege, as it is currently, world over because of data collection, etc. Right? That's what I would like to see. Will that happen? I don't have a crystal ball, but what does my gut say, which is sizable? Probably not. I mean, there are powers to be who control these things, who are making money off them, and they hold the power. For them to have this fundamental shift of power from this elite group back to the person, the individual, something very, very drastic has to happen. I don't know, war, world war, whatever it may be, but there has to be a drastic shift. Realistically, it'll be a mix. There will be give and take, because as the many start saying we want this, and the more the governments, countries don't listen, the more the many are going to start protesting and causing problems. So it will be give and take, and we will have some instance of privacy and being able to maintain our freedom in that aspect. I hope so, at least.
Right. And I think it's super interesting that we have people in really just different parts of the world, because I think that also, like, just your literal geolocation and type of government, like, has a huge impact on sort of like the sphere that we're looking through in terms of this, and openness and privateness. And so Midushan, like, what are your thoughts about this? And just where do you see this going, or where do you want this to go, and how can that happen? Yeah, I think you might be muted. Yep.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Sorry. So without any doubts, not just me, all of us would like this to go in a progressive, positive direction, right? Because it is doing more good than bad. Yeah, it's like Reggie just said, that transfer of power is probably one thing that is holding everything, that is not allowing the transition to happen. And yeah, it could go in the good way, it could go in the bad way, but personally I would say DeFi is more like healed communism. It allows, you have the control, the power is back to people. It's not with a centralized body or a government or a bank, right? So the possibilities are limitless. I would really encourage you, me, and all of us as individuals, and together what we can do to make a better world is only by educating and helping the rest of the community and people who meet on day-to-day basis to simplify the subject as much as possible and talk in the simplest terms. Like Irina said, no jargons, because we didn't, like, when we got into crypto, we were pretty reluctant, right? We didn't trust it could have been scam, but now we understand the potential and the scope behind this technology. And I think it takes a bit of a hiccup to initially help people understand this, but if we work together, especially marketeers, if they can step in, start building in activities that will allow general public to understand the potential of this technology and what good it could do for the world, we would be in a great place in 5 years down the line. But I was also listening to another talk by Reggie, where he says DeFi is this right now. 5 years down the line, there'll be DeFi 2.0. There's no doubts it's going to happen for sure. Every day it's going to update, and there's going to be new features coming into play. What needs to what we shouldn't forget is staying relevant in these tough times, because there's
Right.
Ukraine and Russian wars happening. There's donations going on. I don't know if it's good or bad. And in the same way, there are multiple other things that's happening simultaneously. We just shouldn't forget the relevance and the purpose as to why DeFi can play a good role in making general public or anyone's life better. I think the purpose-driven future through DeFi will make a better world for you and I.
Right. And I don't mean to cut you off, but I think we only have 1 minute left. So Eric, Irina, David, I hope to get to you. Is there anything else that you guys would just like to quickly mention and drop in there?
Just very quickly, for me, I think if we want to see a drastic shift in the way things are going today, then we need founders like us to actually start making that shift, right? We can't wait for the Elon Musks, the big guns out there. Startups who need to start looking at their project and really start making that mainstream. And if that movement is there, the shift will come. I don't think if we wait for the rich to think about projects like this, we will not get there. So it starts with us. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a great point. Irina, do you have anything to mention? Sorry about the timing.
Yeah, great conversation today, and great points were raised. And I would only add that we must take our responsibility. Decentralization is about responsibility of each individual. And once we assume this responsibility, we would be able to really facilitate the right paradigm shift when technology facilitates the better world, and when we have our problems solved by technology and not provoke the data dictatorship. And we are now kind of on a crossroads when we can go to the good side, or we can go to the bad side. And by taking our responsibility, especially in the Web3 space, especially as platform builders, application builders, we can change this.
Yeah. And so I think with that, first of all, David, so glad that you were able to join in, and I loved your points. And I think we have to wrap it up, but everybody made awesome points, and this is super exciting. And I'm really excited now to see where this goes. And of course, there's always room for bad actors, and hopefully more room for the good actors. And just because Web3 seems like such a collaborative environment instead of dog eat dog, like the thriving projects actually like to collaborate and work with each other. And so, yeah, super awesome to have you guys on, and thanks everybody for joining in.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you so much, everybody. This has been brilliant, and sorry I have to cut you off and be the bad guy for the good talk on the panel. And hopefully we'll see you all again. The conversation will be recorded as well, so you'll be able to see it afterwards. And there's another talk starting now, so we'll see you in the next one.
Awesome. See you.
See you guys.
Thanks, everyone.